Hi, everyone. It's Steve Politi from NJ Advanced Media. This week's Rutgers Rant is brought to you by the New Brunswick Development Corporation. A big thank you to our sponsor and to all of our listeners for the continued support. Now let's get to the show.
From NJ.com and the Star Ledger, welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights, with your hosts Steve Politi and Rutgers insiders Brian Fonseca and Pat Lenny. Let's start shopping.
All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Rant. Got ourselves a special show planned for you today. Todderick Hunt, the man, the myth, the legend, our recruiting expert, our talent evaluator. Really, I would say the groove of the NJM staff. What do you say, Brian? How would you describe? What word would you use here? The personality, the cool, or the cool, the NJM staff? What do we got?
The smartest guy on staff.
The smartest guy on staff.
Hey, I'll take it all.
Take it all. Take it all. How you doing?
I'm hanging in there, man. It's a pretty cloudy day today. Just picked up my son from college, so he's back home. Drove over to Philly and grabbed him from the train station. So that's always great to have the kids all under one roof for the holidays.
Nice. Excellent. Yes. And then it's a shame that the holidays correspond with the busiest time of the year for you, but I guess there's nothing you can do, right? Wrapping gifts, taking recruiting calls. I mean, what is this week like for you?
Right. Well, it took a few days off that I wasn't able to use, but that's okay. This is my time of the year. It was kind of weird this year, the way the whole, recruiting calendar sort of synced up with the portal opening and sort of them restricting the portal and having this, short period of time where players can hop in and sort of move around. So it created the sort of frenzy that you don't always see at this time of year. But at the same time, now this is the new, signing date. Like the early signing period is the actual signing period. So as you get later into December, you start seeing some movement. Players land where they land. The transfer portal guys are on a different timeline, so they don't necessarily have to decide by signing day. But they're always in the mix, right? Because everything they do sort of affects what the high school guys do, right? So, these college guys will obviously prefer to take these older, mature guys who've actually done it at this level. Right. So basically, if you don't jump on these opportunities, by the time the portal opens up, you open yourself up to the possibility of missing out on your scholarship, having them pulled. I mean, it's a real rugged arena out there right now. The high school kids are losing. I mean, you got to be a really special player to really feel good, about what you got going on and just kind of moving forward down the line, how things may fall, to have the confidence to know that at the end of this process, I mean, you see so many guys stay committed all year, they get to signing day, the school drops them, or they change coaching status, they have nowhere to go. And now in this climate, if that happens to you, you see a lot of even 4-star caliber guys sometimes, into the transfer portal have nowhere to go. Have a limited number of teams that are actually interested in their services. So it's a different climate for sure.
And we're reaching the point where it seems that there's more players in the transfer portal than there are on the teams. I mean, it's just crazy looking from the outside. I don't know where, don't want to, where all these guys are going to go, but it does get to the point now where you wonder about that, right? I mean, are these guys getting bad advice when they jump in there?
I think a lot of them are, and I mean, you see that from a number of the guys that just kind of linger in there. A lot of guys make mistakes. They jump into the portal, and at that point, the school that you're at no longer has to take you back, right? If nobody takes you. So, yeah, there's a lot of bad advice out there. The grass is always greener. You don't see as much depth on these college teams, right? Because the depth guys are the guys that want to hop into the portal. The guys that can actually play aren't getting the majority of the playing time, right? And other schools know that they can play already. So how do you really build a team? You can go in the portal and quickly update your roster and improve it, but at the same time, you're losing guys. So it's a little bit of a dance that these coaches have to play nowadays. And also, I mean, the portal is being used, to sort of help guys move along as well. I mean, a lot of guys are involuntarily being asked to enter the portal. I mean, it's a tool that coaches can use to improve their team. So, I mean, I mean, you see all kinds of stuff now.
Wild stuff. All right, let's dive right in, Tyler. We got a bunch of topics to cover here, and I want to go straight to this. And you know how I feel about recruiting. I don't follow it on the granular level like you do. I just follow from 30,000 feet. And the view I'm seeing, and this is a sense I get from the fan base too. I don't know if it's just message board noise or the people I talk to specifically, but there's a sense that the recruiting's not going as well as people expected. If you look at the numbers, 55th in the country on 24/7, 11th in the Big Ten. Fonseca just told me only one or two teams in the Big Ten without a 4-star or 5-star recruit. Is that perception wrong? Am I missing something that's happening behind the scenes?
There aren't a lot of big, sexy names on this list. I know the one young man, Jasare Peterson, he was actually a 4-star at one point. Now he's a 3-star recruit. The thing about this class that people do need to understand is they sort of recruited off of philosophy, right? Shiano always says to his staff, they need to get bigger, stronger, faster, and longer to be able to compete and hold up in this conference and not wear down. So many big, strong, fast, physical guys. And I think that's probably the most undervalued trait when it comes to recruiting, right? Durability, right? Do these guys show up? Do they suit up and play games? Or do they, break a fingernail and they're out for the whole week hanging out in the training room, right? You got to be able to suit up and play and compete. And that's another reason why a lot of these coaches, like these guys from the transfer portal, these older, experienced guys, because you have a sample size and you kind of know what you're getting and you're looking to plug and play. With some of these younger guys, it's kind of hard to see it coming. But they stuck to their motto. I think they filled some needs. They definitely recruited a lot of size, a lot of developmental guys that eventually could be guys. I think when you look at body types, Rutgers is starting to look like a Big Ten team. I think the offensive line is starting to look like an offensive line, at least physically. And now that you're hoping that the results on the field, sort of start to pick up. But there are a bunch of young guys in the prior class that they brought in. About 4 of those guys, the guys who were actually able to stay healthy, are all sort of in position to, fill some prominent roles potentially next year and moving forward. They're starting to show some different things. So definitely not a big sexy list, but they definitely served or at least look to fill some needs here.
Bouncing off that, we mentioned offensive line. They have 5 offensive linemen. Usually those kids don't play their first year. But another area that they bolstered, they got 3 wide receivers, Fama Toure, Jesse Ofuri, and Dylan Braithwaite. That's obviously a position of need that they're losing a lot of older guys there, and they need people to plug in. Do you anticipate any of those 3 guys being at a level where they can come in and contribute right away?
Yeah, I think Fama Toure is probably one of the most underrated players in the state. And I know there are a lot of people around the state that feel like he could be like a top 3 to top 5 player in the state in all actuality. The thing is that Irvington team has 4 of those guys, right? They got 4 Power 5, long athletic skill guys that play in the secondary, play some receiver, do a bunch of different things. So, that's just kind of how it works out when you got so many guys. Adon Schuler, the highest ranked recruit in that group, a 4-star headed to Notre Dame. But there are a lot of people who like Fama better. I mean, he's got elite ball skills, a large catch radius. I know there are a lot of people around the Hale Center that I've heard call him the baby Kenny Britt. Similar body structure, speed. He can do a lot of different things. He's explosive and he plays to the edge. And one thing that you find with those Toures is they're all like serious football people. People think when they come up for visits, because you see them around Rutgers so often, that they're hanging out, going out and doing stuff with the guys, and that's sort of their reason for being there. But those guys show up to watch film. They're serious about football. They're not into all the bells and whistles of the recruitment. And I know he's a guy that potentially could come in and that they're looking to potentially help their offensive group catch some balls, stretch the field, do some different things.
Todderick, whoever plays wide receiver in this class doesn't yet know who's going to be calling plays for them next year. That's been a big topic of conversation around what do you think is taking so long with the offensive coordinator search from your perspective? And do you think that matters to these kids who are making this decision, especially in the portal? I mean, if you're transferring in from someplace else, do you need to know who's going to be that guy?
I think they just really got to get it right. And I think they're taking the time to get it right. I know one thing that the staff is doing is reaching out to a bunch of guys and just sort of letting them know the style of offense that they're looking to run. a wide open style with a dual threat quarterback that can do a lot of different things. I know for a long time, Greg Schiano always wanted to stick with that pro style offense, sort of as a vehicle to get guys to the league, right? You want to be a pro, run a pro offense, but that's not necessarily the way football is played, not even at the pro level anymore, where you're seeing a lot of college concepts make their way to the NFL game. So things have definitely changed. I think Greg Schiano knows the importance of making the right call, getting the right guy in there. And, it costs money and it's going to take some time. Unfortunately, with the recruiting calendar, it doesn't sync up in a way in which they could use that, as an advantage, right? This is the guy we got in here. This is exactly what we'll be able to do. And sure, that can certainly hurt some things, but I think they have an idea of the way that they want to play, and now it's just finding the exact guy to sort of lead that group.
Todderick, going back to the class, is there, this is something that fans are always clamoring to know, is there a guy that you think is a sleeper or a guy that you think could exceed his recruiting ranking that could kind of surprise people, whether that's next year or at some point in their career?
Oh, there are a lot of guys in this class, and because I think it's it's an all upside class. A lot of developmental guys, but you're hoping on the back end, become multi-year starters in the Big Ten. I know one of the guys that those guys are really high on is Jashawn Benjamin, the running back from Pahokee, Florida. He's only 5'9", but he's a Big Ten back. Good burst, 4.5, 40-yard dash speed. And he's a physical runner who wants to hurt you, right? He wants to finish off the run. And I just think, his physicality, his build, he creates a nice change of pace in that running back room, projecting it out down the line. Maybe he and Sam Brown could be a good 1-2 punch where it's coming at you every play, just physicality on top of physicality. But he's certainly got a guy on the smaller side, but is really physical and could be a good addition to that room when it comes to running the football. Just a lot of guys on the tail end when you talk about upside, a guy like Moselle Williams, just a really athletic offensive lineman, really light on his feet for such a big guy, a developmental guy who isn't going to help him from day one. But if you can develop him, you have a big athletic, offensive tackle down the line. Logan Blake, 6'7" tight end. He showed up 198 pounds at Rutgers in June, and now he's 228 pounds, 6'7", soft hands, body control. He's physical. I think one thing that Rutgers really is looking to get better at is scoring, right? Red zone scoring. And having those big, tall, electric guys down there low, Fama, Logan Blake, DeAndre Johnson, who I didn't mention, a 6'8", just tons of untapped potential. He's already got plus size, plus hands, ball skills, can do some different things. So these are guys that may not have had huge recruitments. Maybe they play at places, some of them that aren't heavily recruited. DeAndre Johnson, for that matter, I think is the first player to come out of his school and play Power 5 balls. For whatever reason, a lot of these guys aren't highly ranked, but do have plus potential, do have Big Ten type size and attributes that these guys just have to develop.
All right, let's talk quarterbacks, because I'm sure that's the position that concerns Rutgers fans the most. We talked last time we had you on the show. We talked about how hard it is to recruit a quarterback when you've got one. Clearly, these guys are committed to Gavin Wimsatt, right? We've seen that. We saw what he did over the end of the year. It was all about developing him. They added a quarterback in this class, Ajani Shepherd. Again, it seems like a developmental guy. Do you think? Is he just a guy they're adding to that room, or do you think he can play? And along those lines, do you think they need to take someone from the portal to fill that room out?
Well, I think I really like the kid, and I do think he can play. I mean, I saw him play Don Bosco, probably 10 Power 5 guys on that team, and I thought he was the best player on the field that day. Wow. I mean, those guys beat Bosco. I on the prep. That shocked me. And I know one thing that people like about this young man is his demeanor. I mean, he's just sort of like a natural leader. Physically, he's a lot bigger than a lot of these coaches thought he was. I mean, he's a guy that finishes off the run, can also run the football. But and I'm sure some things will change, right? When he reaches the college level, coaches don't necessarily want you finishing off the run. They want you getting out of bounds, getting down and sliding. But this is a big physical kid. I think the key trait that he has is he's just like really decisive. He makes a decision and he's gone. Is he going to run? Either he's going to run the ball, he's going to throw the seam, he's going to get rid of that football, but he's going to make a decisive play. And I think that's what a lot of coaches like about this young man. Ideally, he's a guy that'll be brought in to sort of, I think, play behind Gavin for a couple years, learn and develop, and then ultimately be the guy. But at the same time, use those tools to sort of bring out the best in Rutgers quarterback. Unfortunately, Johnny won't be on campus until the summer, so he'll miss out on the spring and sort of miss that opportunity to do so. Do I think Rutgers needs to find another quarterback in the portal? Of course. I mean, I just think, competition is what makes those guys better,
Right.
especially at the quarterback position. And there's some guys there, but there isn't a whole lot there to push the young man. And I know he's got a lot of great talent inside of him, a lot of upside, flash some different things. And I even watched him last spring, and he made a couple plays in that scrimmage prior to the spring game that were just like wow plays, like just downfield balls on the run, just some really spectacular football play. So he's definitely got some tools, and now it's about bringing those tools out, which I think bringing an older guy who's experienced, who can do some things, sort of helps you do.
One number from the recruiting class I'm curious about. Steve pointed this out earlier. I think 19 of the commits, only 5 of them are from Jersey, and I think they have a trio from New York and a lot from Florida. I know Greg has talked a lot about the state of Rutgers expanding into Florida and all these things, but do you find that they're not recruiting Jersey as heavily because is that strategic? Is that a matter of kids from Jersey not wanting to come to Rutgers? I guess or is that just an anomaly that it just happened to work out this way in this class, and that's just kind of a year-by-year thing?
Yeah, it's a year by year thing, and this just happened to be a down year. Like 2023 is probably the worst, ensemble of and I'm just talking in totality of recruits from New Jersey, and probably the last at least decade or so. So there weren't really a ton of guys that Rutgers went on or thought fit sort of what they needed to do. There were some other guys that I may have offered, like the 2 young men from Pennsauken, Johnny Shakur, and I know they ended up transferring to Winslow and Ali, and there were some other guys like Cole Skinner who I liked, or Joshua Richards from East Orange. But those are guys, you sort of put them in a bind, right? Because what would you rather have at this point? A transfer portal guy who would come in with experience, fill those spots, or trust in, a young high school player who's probably going to have to come in and develop when you're talking college football, which is basically a what have you done for me lately league, right? Right. What have you done for me lately? We have to win now. So you put these coaches in a position where, of course, they're going to take the older, proven, experienced player. And a lot of these guys in the portal aren't necessarily proven, but at least you have something to sort of look back on. You got some practice film. You can talk to coaches. You can find out, exactly how a player was within a system, how he operated within a room, what his personality was like. Did he love to work? Did he love football? So you have a lot more data to be able to evaluate a prospect once he's gone to a college and jumps in the portal. So that's why, I honestly feel like they need to create a minimum number of high school players that these schools need to take, because if not, there isn't a whole lot of incentive to take them.
Along those lines, obviously, every year it seems like it for a while it's been the high school kid, high school recruit that everyone's obsessed with. Is he going to come? Is he going to come? Is he going to come? Now it seems like it's shifting to the portal guys who people are obsessed with. Bellamy and Gould, that was a topic of conversation for several weeks. Ended up going to Syracuse. Do you have a sense of what happened there with Rutgers and trying to get those guys on campus?
Well, Rutgers didn't recruit Gould the second time around. I know at the end of his recruitment the first time around, they had sort of cooled on him. And this just comes down to fit. He's super physically talented. He can do a lot of different things. Ultimately, he's somewhat of a tweener, right? And I don't know if Rutgers felt he was necessarily the best fit for their program. Bellamy, I know, is a guy that they recruited all the way through and sent a few coaches out to see him just about a couple weeks back. So there was certainly some interest in the beginning. I know there was some interest on the other side. For whatever reason, the two sides just couldn't get together. In the meantime, I know Bellamy took a visit with Gould out to Syracuse and ultimately committed there and sort of kept things kind of low, right? But if you're a portal guy, these guys keep things to the vest, right? So if he still goes up and ends up visiting Rutgers or any other school, it doesn't necessarily matter. Ultimately, it's about where they sign at. And I know that Rutgers, was a school that Bellamy was looking to potentially visit. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. He didn't get up on a visit this past weekend. After going to Syracuse the prior weekend, time ticked away. Ultimately, he just ended up committing to Syracuse. And it'll be interesting to see what happens.
All right, and this is probably the biggest issue in college sports right now, Todderick, the NIL, name, image, and likeness, how it's changing the sport. Fonseca had a good story today just on what's happening at Rutgers. The Knights of the Raritan are launching their biggest fundraiser yet, hoping to raise $1 million in 30 days through a matching program. That sounds like NPR does. You know, the match your $1 for $1 and you get a tote bag. Is that true, Brian? You get a tote bag for this year?
My understanding is there is no tote bag, but you
There's
get a nice
no
pat
tote
on the
bag.
back.
You're a nice pat in the back. But I mean, seriously though, where do you sense that how important that is right now for recruits? I mean, is it the number one thing, or are we overblowing it?
I think it's a little bit overblown. I mean, I think the top tier guys may be getting some serious money, but for the most part, I mean, most of these guys, little local car dealerships or whoever it may be, are sort of using these guys to promote their businesses, things of that nature. A lot of modest sort of situations, unless you're an elite guy. You need elite guys to win football games, especially in the Big Ten. So to start swaying those kind of guys, I think it was Jason McCourty who said it best for the recruiting piece that we did on the Big Ten anniversary story. I mean, if you got a school offering you a stipend, you get a car, you get this and you get that, and another school, pulls up at the table and doesn't have those things, why am I listening to you? And although all kids may not feel that way or think that way, there are a good number of them who do. So to get those super elite guys who unfortunately are well, I'm not even going to say unfortunately, because I do believe that these young men should be paid, right? Somebody's making the money, right? And they're creating the interest for the product, right? So I have absolutely no problem with them being paid. I have absolutely no problem with the portal. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that, it doesn't make it super tough to build a team, to sort of create this sort of atmosphere of team when you got guys that can sort of just enter free agency whenever they want to.
All right, this is a good. Let's do this. Let's jump into some Rutgers insider questions now on the topic of recruiting. Then we'll come back to basketball and a few other things going on. But I think it just a good transition to what a lot of our texters have. Some of the same concerns I mentioned up front. And this is one from Paul Jaffe from Oregon, one of our most loyal texters. Walk me off the ledge, please. Recruiting has gone backwards since Shiano came back. Portal has not gone particularly well. NIL lagging, and then we lose a legacy player to Syracuse. I need your help. I mean, feel that one. I guess if you're looking big picture, this class certainly isn't good as the last class, but the last class was pretty good. I mean, is that how you look at it?
Right. Well, I'll tell you what, I think Rutgers had a different philosophy, right? When Greg first came back, they offered a limited number of guys. Like the value of that Rutgers offer had shot through the roof because they weren't offering everybody, right? It was to the point where I was about to do a story sort of comparing the number of players that they offered to some of these other schools that just basically throw offers at the wall and sees what sticks. But the philosophy sort of had to change, right? 2023 recruiting class with NIL, it's not necessarily the same thing, right? You don't know who's going to get the big money, who's going to get those type of opportunities down the line. So unfortunately, it changed the way that they've had to recruit, and they are going through an adjustment period. I mean, sure, they'd love to have a bunch of big, sexy, 4 stars on the list, but I've been told time and time again that that's not necessarily a goal for the staff, who would prefer to have players that sort of fit the needs of their program. I mean, whether that's, true or not, at the end of the day, it all works together, right? The whole, the public piece, people seeing the excitement of big time players going to your school, which attracts other schools, attracts donors, attracts more money. It all works hand in hand. So obviously, all coaches want the big time guys. But at the same time, I do, again, think that they, address some areas of need. I think they have some young guys from last year's class that are sort of coming on, especially like along that offensive line. Kobe Asamoah started at the end of the year. Dinette, big interior guy already in the 2 deep. Taj White, Dante Chin also sort of started to come on towards the end of last year. So at this stage, it's about, listen, they got the body types, they got the big, long, strong guys. It looks like a legitimate Big Ten roster. And now it just comes down to development. Starting at the quarterback position, which, Rutgers has struggled to develop, just kind of historically, and just spilling down throughout the entire program. Develop these guys. And it'll be interesting to see where they're at in a year from now.
All right, a couple more on the OC search. And Fonseca, you might have some information on this. You might not. Tony and Lawrence, who I met at the rack. Hey, thanks for saying hi, Tony. Coming out of the game, basketball game against Wake Forest, tapped me on the shoulder. It's Tony from Lawrence. I'm like, yeah, I know.
Nice.
Great to meet you. Nice, right? He had 2 questions. Is it possible the OC search is in limbo because he's waiting on someone? I guess that could be someone coaching in a bowl game, someone in the NFL?
Yeah.
Brian, is it possible that he just can't hire the guy he wants? There's no big delay here. It's just that's what's just going on behind the scenes.
Anything is possible. Is it probable? I would probably say no. I mean, you see programs around the country who have had their coaches leave. They've hired a new head coach, a new offensive coordinator, and a new staff in the time since the season has ended. I think it's more likely, and I don't know this. I know you give me way too much credit for knowing this. I don't, and I don't think many people do know this, but I would reckon it's more likely that either they have not hit their top targets, or their top targets have had no interest, or something to that effect. I don't think they have this super secret candidate that's just lurking behind the shadows waiting to come in, because I think that's just more of the fan base trying to rationalize why it's taken, it's been 2 months since Sean Gleason has been fired. It's been 3 weeks since the season has ended, and people are just trying to understand why there's been nothing coming out. There's been no white smoke coming out of the Vatican. So I don't know. And I have to think that before the end of the year, they will hire someone. I would be very surprised if they didn't do that. I would not be surprised if my midnight gift from Santa on Christmas is an OC hire. But
wouldn't that be great? That'd be perfect. Merry Christmas.
Yeah,
Open your laptop.
Hey, Rutgers Rant listeners, it's Steve Politi from NJ Advanced Media. We appreciate you supporting this podcast and the sponsors who help us continue doing it. This week's podcast is brought to you by the New Brunswick Development Corporation. If you listen to this show, you love Rutgers. And if you love Rutgers, you know the positive impact that DevCo has made on the campus and its community. We thank the New Brunswick Development Corporation for its continued support and for helping make this podcast possible. Now back to the show.
I mean, listen, ideally, if they could have an OC in place, right now heading into signing day, I mean, they would. I mean, there's no way that you wouldn't, right? You want to look solidified and show people how you're moving forward before they sign their national letter of intent. So I think if they could have, the guy that they want signed and announced by now, they certainly would. We have to see what that means. I do know, again, that they know how they want to play, what they want to do. And at the end of the day, it's just finding that person that's going to lead that group and do things in that manner.
All right, this is a question along those lines from another texter. If they change offensive coordinators, it's likely or possible that the new guy will want to bring in his own staff. Are we going to see some more staff changes, you think? I mean, Todderick, you're around these guys. Do you get the sense that there might be a shakeup on the offensive staff beyond the OC?
I mean, it's possible, but I mean, Greg is the guy. I mean, he makes all the decisions. I'd be surprised to see a guy come in here, as an OC, but maybe that would be one of his demands, right? Whoever ends up, being that chosen guy, maybe his demand would be, I have to be able to bring in all my own guys. And maybe Greg would be willing to do some things differently. But all I've known, since I've been around on the beat covering recruiting is, Greg makes every little decision. He runs the show. So it would be interesting to see that happen, and that would show you a certain level of desperation maybe that they would have to move the ball offensively, because it's been a bit of a struggle.
All right, diving into a few more things. We talked about the NIL bunch. It's interesting that Gio Baker said in the tweet, this is another comment, that NIL is the most important for student athletes right now. At this one, maybe you can take this one, Brian. He wants to know if we agree with that, number one, and number two, does it change and parlay into the Shiano-Hobbs agreement on a new football-only facility, which we haven't heard a lot about lately?
Yeah, I think it's certainly true. I think players would rather have money in their pockets than play in some fancy new facility because, aside from the aesthetics, you could have a nicer looking weight room, some newer lockers and all these beautiful things, but you can't really take that to the store and buy anything with it. I think every 100-pound dumbbell weighs the same. They give you the same results. So yes, I think that NIL is probably more important to players currently. Whether that affects the football palace plans, I don't know for certain, though I do think that it's clear because Greg Schiano is telling boosters they need money for NIL in the summer. He's endorsing the Knights of the Raritan $1 million match fundraising deal. I think it's clear that, and I think he's kind of expressed this, I don't know explicitly, but he's kind of hinted at that he is aware of the importance of NIL, that it does seem like that's taken kind of the front seat in the recruitment plan as far as his idea of what is more important for recruits. So I do think that is the reality, and I think that they're treating that as the reality.
Patrick, you talk to these kids. Do they give a crap about the waterfall in the lobby and the massage chair and the lounge and God knows what else they have at LSU or Georgia or wherever?
Well, it depends. I mean, each kid is different. I know the one guy, Devontae Walker, that they had up last weekend, 6'3", 185-pound wide receiver transferred out of Kent State that they're hoping to get at some point down the line out the transfer portal. He was under recruited out of high school, so he never really got to take all of those big visits. Ended up at NC Central and State, then at Kent State. So when he got to Rutgers, I mean, he was just, shocked and amazed by the facilities and all. The trip to New York and all the lights and being down in the city, and said it was probably the best time he had ever had, just walking around. He's probably the outlier, right? The big time guys that get to see all the different places and take all the official and unofficial visits, they're probably a little bit more just used to it all.
Right.
They did all the photo shoots, and you don't see them trying on jerseys anymore. They're sort of beyond that part of it all, and they kind of want to know about the actual football and what life will be here, sort of moving forward if I chose to go to school here. So, I mean, it's all important. It's all meaningful, and it's all things that you sort of have to pay attention to now as a college recruiter.
Is he that we hadn't asked about that kid? Is he coming from Kent State? Where's your crystal ball say with him?
I actually haven't gotten to reconnect with him. I know he took an official visit to UNC this past weekend. So today would actually be the day to follow up with him and see how that went. I know they've obviously got unreal facilities due in part to, the big basketball brand and all the money that they pull in up there. So I'm sure it was impressive. It probably helped Rutgers getting them up on a visit first, right? Because Rutgers sort of got to be that first school to sort of woo him and show him some different things. And I know New York City also played a big factor in his visit. They obviously don't have a New York City. As of right now, or at least heading into the weekend visit, it was a two-team race seemingly between UNC and Rutgers. I know Penn State and Pitt were also trying to get him to come up for a visit, so that could certainly change some things down the line. But I will follow up with him and see exactly where he stands. But just talking to him throughout the week, he seemed really high on Rutgers and seemed like a guy that they should be able to potentially lock up.
This is interesting. Just it occurred to me, and I'm curious what you think about this, because it seems like now the portal guys, like, they're not looking at, oh, there's 12 guys ahead of me in a class. Like, I just noticed on Twitter today, Arizona's top receiver transferred to Southern Cal, which is like, I mean, how many receivers does Southern Cal have at this point? It's just, so I wonder if a kid like that looks at the situation and says, all right, if I go to Rutgers, I'm going to be their number one receiver. I mean, there's no question I'm going to step in. I'm going to be that guy. Or does that not matter? Is he looking in like, I want to go to a place that has 5 or 6 good receivers? I want to go to a place that has an established offense. I mean, that's, which way do you think these guys go?
Yeah, you sell what you have to sell as a program. And one of the things that Rutgers has to sell is come and be a part of the reason, right? Penn State can't sell that. Ohio State can't sell that. Come be a part of us generating, this football identity, this reputation for consistency. You can help build this and be a part of that. And I know that's been a part of the recruiting pitch, for a long time. I mean, all of these great things have already been done at these other schools. And even if you're an All-American, like, you can be forgotten because there are just so many of them there.
Yeah.
So I think that's always something that Rutgers, I put it this way, Rutgers will be happy when they can no longer push that, right? Because that means that, you have that Big Ten caliber roster, you have that competition level where you're not just coming in here and able to get on the field and compete. And I think they're actually getting to that point where you're seeing lesser. In special teams, you'll see a bunch of guys out there being able to run around and make plays. I thought this past year was probably a little bit of a down special teams year outside of punting, right? You're talking kickoff, that field goal unit. But a big reason for that is they had a lot of walk-ons on those units. So now, you bring in guys like Devon Fuse, Abram Wright, a big 6'2" and a half, 220-pound linebacker from Florida, Bo Mascow, Ian Strong, guys who can fly down the field on special teams. Jesse O'Fury, who's just really physically put together, looks like he's already been in a Big Ten program for 2-3 years when you look at his build. Now you can replace those walk-ons with guys like this who can fly down the field and make plays on special teams. And when you're in a competitive league like the Big Ten, every little thing matters, every little thing counts. And that's also a big thing for the defense, having, Corsack be able to manipulate field position and all of those things that he was able to do, and now you lose that. You're just constantly working as a coach, tweaking, balancing things out, and just making it happen.
All right, Brian, we have one basketball question from our readers that tells you where the focus is right now. And it's about as deep into the weeds as you could go with a basketball question. That's great. It's a good question, though. Are you surprised Jalen Miller not getting more minutes? I thought he was important last year as a defensive specialist and expected to see him more this year. Other players are doing the job and he's not needed larger. Also heard a lot about Chol in the preseason. Thought we'd see more of him. What about those two guys?
We really are going deep into the weeds.
Deep in the woods. Why not? Go right down to them.
They get a big win and all their guys are contributing. And all of a sudden people look down to the 12th man on the bench and wonder, hey, why is he not playing? This fan base surprises me all the time. Jalen Miller is not playing because everyone ahead of him is playing better than him. Yeah. Rutgers has the third best defense in the country per Ken Pom. And Jalen Miller's specialty is defense. It doesn't seem like they need him. And offensively, frankly, when he's out there, a lot of times they're playing 4-on-5. So he doesn't really have anything to offer. It's obvious that Rutgers likes him. His teammates like him. His coaches like him. He came in at the end of the Wake Forest game on Saturday when they're up 20 points. He got a nice up and under layup, and the bench was screaming and excited as though he hit the game-winning shot. So he's obviously a big part of the team that people like. He just has not carved out a role in the rotation. And given that Steve Pikiell typically tightens the rotation as conference play approaches, I don't particularly see him playing outside of a specialist defensive role if Caleb McConnell or Mawat Mag get in foul trouble. And Antonio Chol, he's a freshman. He's a true freshman who enrolled early after reclassifying up a year. He's just not ready to contribute yet. I think we've kind of learned that Steve Pikiell likes to laud his players in the preseason, and we should always take those things with a grain of salt because, it's possible he was shooting 60% on threes. I don't think so, because if he was, he'd probably be playing. Antonio Chol could be a key piece down the line. He's not, and I think that's a good thing, because if this was, and we shouldn't be comparing Rutgers now to the past era because it's been 7 years, but Antonio Chol is a kid that under Eddie Jordan would be playing right now, which would be in bad sign.
30 minutes a game.
It's great that he's not playing. It's a great sign. But I guess I'd like to take a second to actually talk about the game they just played.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Oh, a huge win. I mean, they had to win against Wake Forest. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was, and they killed them. Yeah, you
were there. You saw it. They bounced back from that awful week. They had a week to kind of get off, and Wake Forest is not a great ACC team.
Well, they won. Let's be fair. They did win at Wisconsin, so there is some. They were a good team.
They have a player in not a Johnny Shepard, not the Rutgers quarterback commit. They have a player in I can't remember his name now. Their star point guard, Steve Pikiell. I was talking to him the day before the game and was just praising the kid as this game-changing player, which you saw him do at Wisconsin, and Caleb McConnell completely locked him up. Granted, he was coming off a pretty nasty ankle injury, and it's hard to tell how much that impacted him, but still locked him up. And from there, Wake Forest really couldn't create anything. Rutgers defense is legit, as we've seen throughout the season. We saw it again Saturday, and the offense against a team that, frankly, again, does not play great defense, a team that does not have much of an interior presence. Rutgers dominated them at the rim. Rutgers finally finished their layups. Rutgers scored 81 points.
Yep.
It's a good win. And now they have 2 tomato cans that they should beat pretty easily before going to Mackey Arena and playing number 1 Purdue. So could they have been better in non-conference? Probably. They probably should have one more win. The Ohio State win obviously should have been a win in the truest sense of the word, but it wasn't. But I think that all things considered, I think they're in a good spot re-entering Big Ten play.
Yeah, I mean that was a balanced effort from the team. I mean, I think you're wondering how this team's going to respond to losing Geo Baker. You're seeing it now just with everyone contributing in that one. I mean, Cam Spencer was awesome. I mean, efficient as you can be. 5 for 5, 3 for 3 from free throw, 2 for 2 behind 3. I just love the way Caleb McConnell he plays it. He's becoming the leader of this team. Him and Paul Mulcahy, no question. Yeah, I mean, I think they're in a better place. And after getting robbed the way they got robbed, and we talked about it, there's no question that lingered in the Seton Hall game. I think you can now say with some degree of certainty that blown call cost them 2 games. I think so. I think that's a fair statement. They just weren't right mentally in that game. It was just a completely different team. The team we saw against Indiana was the team we saw against Wake Forest. What happened in between? Well, I think we know the reason for that. You watch any of the hoops, Todderick? You've been tuning in a little bit.
Yeah, I do tune in here and there, and I'm just excited that people care. They got a sport that people care about. I mean, people care about it from game to game, the excitement, the tight battles, the celebrations. It's just been, and also, I mean, even the Hero Ball, which I love, the big shots at the end. I mean, those guys defend. I think they've taken on Pikel's personality. It's fun to watch consistently, and I don't think we could say we were always in that place.
Oh, no, of course not. Yeah. And that's good. The program's in a good place. So, Brian, do you think, looking at the Big Ten, where they are now, do you have a higher opinion of the Big Ten or a lower opinion of the Big Ten now that we're approaching the actual meat of the conference play? I'm amazed by the standings. There's nobody. Wisconsin's 2-0, Purdue, obviously the best team, but beyond that, I couldn't. If you gave me 20 guesses to come up with the order 1 to 14, I would not get it right.
I'm surprised at how good the majority of the league is, but only because I fell into the same trap that everyone fell into this offseason, like we fall into every offseason, that the Big Ten is not as good as it was because it lost a lot of talent and there's a lot of uncertainty, yada, yada. The Big Ten is full of great coaches and great programs that always seem to figure things out year to year. I think Rutgers has become one of those great programs that is learning how to cope with the loss of a program great. Purdue is, like you said, the best team in the league, bar none. They have the best player in the country in Zach Edey. The guy is a monster. He's unstoppable, and he doesn't get tired, which is insane for a 7'4" kid. But outside of that, there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of question marks. Illinois has a ton of talent, but they seem to have a ton of internal turmoil as well. Maryland has come down to earth. Kevin Willard's strong start has hit its usual January swoon early. Ohio State is good, but they're very inconsistent. It's going to be it really should be a fun league. It should be a league that Rutgers should be at the top of right now, standing at 2-0. The standings are a bit tough to figure out just because they've only played 2 games. And I should mention Penn State is the most fun team in the country. They're so much fun to watch. They just bomb threes. It's awesome. They have maybe the best point guard in the league in Jalen Pickett. But yeah, I'm excited to watch Big Ten basketball on a regular, week by week basis. And I think it's relatively wide open, not for the title race, because I think Purdue is the clear favorite, but like you said, 2 to maybe 9, I wouldn't be surprised if any team finishes anywhere in that order.
Yeah, it is amazing looking at the net rankings. Gosh, Indiana 23, Ohio State 26, Illinois 29, 28. It's just Iowa 30. Maryland 35. It just the number of teams that are grouped right in there. It's gonna be fun, and that's all you can ask for. And I think that this team has showed me enough in non-conference that I'm pretty confident. It's still confident as an NCAA tournament team. But I would encourage them to staple that statement from. And by the way, we have to give you the credit for this. You called it Friday news dump from the Big Ten on that. And it's been a little while since they issued that statement at 7 p.m. on Friday. You said it was going to happen. It was the ultimate Friday news dump. And that's what happened. Congratulations. Another prediction correct.
7th. I didn't think it would be that late. That was an insane. At that point, you might as well not even just drop a statement. Jesus Christ. We were halftime of the 7 o'clock games.
Yeah.
But
just tuck it away under the bed. That's all.
That's exactly what happened. Yeah, that's great. You gotta love the conference.
While everybody's sleeping.
It was Michigan. If Michigan, it would have been noon on Monday. Anyway, I can't. All right, what else we got? We know we got wrestling. Pat Lanning will be back next week as the wrestling team is taking a little hiatus here. What else we got? Anything else going on? No?
Women's hoops won against New Orleans over the weekend in a nice little game preparation before the Big Ten.
So they got their teeth kicked in by Princeton. Is that a bad sign?
Yeah, well, they had a great first half. They were up 10, I think, at halftime, and then they just completely melted down because they have 8 players and no depth, and they got gassed and couldn't hit shots. And is it a bad sign? I don't think anything was really a bad sign for this team this year. Any win they can get is a bonus, and kind of just filling out the calendar and hoping to survive between now and March.
Yikes.
Survival. That's all we're trying to do between now and March. Let's face it. All right, Todderick, what do you got on tap this week for signing day? Any big pieces coming up you can tease? Usual good coverage and any surprises, something that might happen that would, that could come out of nowhere?
Well, they had a big 4-star offensive lineman, Chime Onudu, up this past weekend. He was committed to Old Dominion and decommitted before the official visit. Could potentially decide in February, right? So being a 4-star, he just got bumped up. A bunch of teams hopped in, have offered recently. I know Ole Miss is one of them. But if he doesn't decide until February, he'll have another 20 offers by then. It'll be a different situation. But if he could potentially decide on signing day, he's the guy that Rutgers, being the last team that he visited, coming off the final official visit weekend before the dead period, that they hope to potentially add, at least from the high schoolers. The transfer portal, again, different timeline. These guys, it's basically, to a person, as far as when they actually sign and pick a school and things of that nature. And again, they hold things close to vest and understand sort of how the process works, being older, more mature guys, so they can crack at any time. But I wouldn't put any signing day expectations on any of those guys. I think the goal right now is really to keep the guys in the fold that you have in the fold, right? Because you got different schools obviously trying to poach, different players simply because it's the time of year to do so. At the end of the day, for these college coaches right now, they've been recruiting these kids all year long. They want to get their signatures in. They want to be able to sort of put a bow on the recruitment of some of these guys. They'll see whatever happens. Sometimes there's movement on signing day. Sometimes kids get dropped, and they're always looking to obviously see what opens up. Always keeping an eye on the portal. But I think things are pretty much situated like they're going to be. I wouldn't expect a whole lot of movement on signing day.
I feel sorry for that Old Dominion coach. He loses his quarterback. Now he loses
his
a 4-star
quarterback too,
tackle. I mean,
right.
this is a hard business, man.
And he's a quarterback
Rough.
whisperer. He's a quarterback whisperer. So it says a lot for Johnny to actually, flip to Rutgers, which is closer to home and obviously in a better conference. I think there was just Rutgers had two high school guys that they wanted to go on at the end, right? Him and Grusser. They got a Johnny who's got some great tools. Can hopefully come in and push some of these guys.
All right. On that note, let's sign off. Todderick, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. It's always great to have you. Information you can't get anyplace else. Fonseca, have a good holiday. Lanny will be back when we come back from the other side of it. We'll talk some hoops. We'll talk some wrestling. We'll recap signing day and whatever else is going on. So we'll see you soon. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant. To participate in the conversation and receive live updates about the Scarlet Knights directly to your phone, sign up at NJ.com/insider.
You haven't heard enough from me yet, huh? Steve Politi here for one last thank you to this episode's sponsor, New Brunswick Development Corporation, and to listeners like you who make it all the way to the end of the show. We'll see you again soon.